A man has stolen the soul of an ancient dragon, and faces off against a young girl riding a huge amalgamation of an orca and a cat. The titans clash, each powerful enough to destroy buildings until only one remains standing, though not without some collateral damage. As I arrived to this city during its reconstruction, I repeatedly heard the same questions from the commoners. Who was that girl, and how could she call upon the aid of such a mighty beast, such that it would fell the would-be tyrant who sought such power for himself? An understandable inquiry, as such powers are incredibly rare on Earth, but where I'm from, they're much more common, and the answer is obvious. Lily is a summoner. To be a summoner means to forge a supernatural bond with a magical creature. The caster empowers their ally, their presence acting as an anchor. Meanwhile, the companion uses their strength to defend their caster from danger. The technical name for this type of companion is an eidolon, beings from beyond this plane of existence and whose very forms can be molded to fit a given situation or the summoner's desires. Increases in attacking or defensive potency, extra appendages shaped into various types of limbs, or even other options like breath weapons are all available evolutions summoners can mold their companion with as their arcane knowledge deepens. But even when alone, the caster is not completely helpless. A summoner's connection to the arcane arts grants them access to a maximum of 6th level spells, mostly revolving around conjuration effects that can create creatures or objects, or transmutation effects that can alter themselves or what is around them. For most summoners, this innate connection to conjuration magic also manifests with the ability to cast the summon monster level of spells, easier than, well, almost anyone else. However, eidolons are rather jealous entities and will refuse to let their partner rely on any other summon while they still take breath. The connection between a summoner and their eidolon is known as a lifelink. Through it, they may feel each other's presence and share each other's pain, and it is this tether that anchors the eidolon to their caster and the material plane at large. If the summoner focuses, they may even use this connection to share their senses of the partner, seeing what they see and hearing what they hear. However, enough damage to the eidolon's body, separating the pair over too great a distance, or more direct magical means may break this tether, shunting the eidolon back to whatever plane it came from for the day. But an eidolon never truly dies so long as their summoner still lives. So, after 24 hours, the outsider may be brought back to their partner's side. At early stages, this lifelink begins to manifest as a mere rebuffing force that repels attacks made towards the summoner, so long as both remain close to one another. If the eidolon is too far away, the summoner may correct this by magically calling the eidolon to their side, or instead may use charges of this ability to swap positions, teleporting each other from one place to the other, if that's the more advantageous decision. Once the bond between summoner and eidolon reaches a higher degree of power, the evolving power of the lifelink may be utilized by the summoner themselves, manifesting as the same types of physical changes that warp the eidolon's form. Past this point, the melding of souls transforms into a full-blown life bond, allowing both not just to share their senses, but their actual vitality, letting the eidolon take their master's pain to keep both of them alive. Once this level of symbiosis is reached, for a brief period of time, the two may even merge their forms together to become a true force of nature. Finally, once the connection between summoner and eidolon has reached its peak, the summoner gains the ability to take on the same form as their companion, retaining their mind but transmuting their body to become a perfect copy of their partner's. I do not yet believe that Lily has reached this stage, but due to the special connection with her partner, she may not be that far off. Not everyone who becomes a summoner is an intentional dabbler in the arcane arts. Soulbound summoners, specifically, are a variant of the archetype whose connections to power were accidental or out of their control. In some cases, these bonds were merely circumstantial, while other soulbound summoners never contacted an outsider at all, instead manifesting their eidolon from their own minds in response to some immense, often magical trauma. Regardless, the events that create this type of summoner are entirely fused to the summoner's psyche. This means that, unlike most eidolons, which reside in the alternate planes, while not on this one, this companion cannot be banished or dismissed magically because, well, there's no extra planar home for them to be banished to. This also means that healing and resummoning the eidolon is a far easier task than most summoners. If the eidolon is slain, the summoner can just bring them back by pulling from their own vitality. The unusual nature of this connection is not without its drawbacks, however. Soulbound summoners pay for their power through a pact-bound curse similar to what afflicts oracles. This curse cannot be broken so long as the summoner gains power, and visually manifests as unique markings that explicitly signify themselves to those that pass by. For Lily, it seems that her entire body has covered in wave-like runes that glow whenever she is manifesting a particularly potent amount of her power. As such, it seems obvious to me that she has been cursed as a deep one, slowing her ever so slightly on land, but massively improving her capabilities with water-based magic, or in moving within watery environments. Lastly, since a soulbound summoner's magical origins are closer to a sorcerer than a true wizard, they do not gain the same amount of training with conjuration magics needed to gain the innate mastery to summon other creatures at will should their eidolon fall. Instead, this potential energy is funneled into a much deeper connection to their eidolon, granting it much more power than the eidolon of most any other type of summoner. All of this, well, explains Lily's connection to her eidolon, but it doesn't yet explain how that eidolon came to be, or how a creature small enough to carry can become large enough to level a city. I found a news story from shortly after the incident. A journalist had apparently approached Lily and asked her about her story. She deflected most of it, save for one detail. Apparently, her original home was elsewhere, specifically a small, remote place called Rudolph Island. Traveling to this quiet village took a bit of time, even with my talents. But what I found was intriguing. Perched near the shore of this island was a statue of, to the less trained eye, some type of whale, possibly an orca, but I knew better. My research over the past 2 or so years has found so-called nature deities are much more common than back home. True, magical beasts roam my homeland much more frequently than on Earth, but that rarity, combined with the natives having fewer tools to combat these beasts, has instead led to them being worshipped, which in turn seems to have bestowed some spark of divinity to them. Not enough to grant clerical magic to the faithful, but it does seem that these beasts' lifespans are mysteriously extended thanks to the devotion of their worshippers. Regardless, I'm going off topic. As I said, this was no mere depiction of a killer whale. The older locals referred to her as Shylily, but to my eyes, this creature of legend was an aklut, bearing traits of the apex predators of the frozen land and sea. Legends speak that these behemoths are perpetually shrouded in blizzards. Normally, only barely intelligent enough to understand the language of the ocean, Aquan, it seems that the spark of divinity Shylily acquired allowed her to understand and have an amicable relationship with the people of Rudolph Island since centuries past. However, there was a slight issue for the beast. Accessing the latent magical fields here on Earth is taxing, to say the least, and even a local god will tire from it given enough time. According to the elders I talked to, Shylily had been dormant for at least a century, long enough for many of the youth to consider her a mere legend. But seemingly not everyone was convinced that she was just an old wives' tale. Some woman utilizing technology similar to that Lily later faced found Shylily as she slept underwater. The ensuing battle sent a tidal wave towards the town that apparently washed Lily out to sea, shortly after which she emerged once more with those blue markings and the mysterious connection to the sea. Based on this combination of the local accounts I spoke with and my own research in the area, I believe that Shylily was quite likely mortally wounded by this interloper. With few other options, she must have channeled the last of her power to save the life of the innocent girl that I imagine was likely drowning. The pact was formed, transferring Lily into a being of the ocean and fusing their souls into one. Now, whenever she physically manifests, she appears similar to what she was, but ever so slightly changed due to the limits of how an Eidolon's evolution path can be molded. Somewhat uniquely, Spoof also appears to have developed an Eidolon evolution I've never encountered before, something I've had to say far too often since coming to Earth. But this allows her to shrink from her true, huge size to a form small enough for a shorter girl like Lily to carry with ease. Granted, I didn't personally know many summoners back home, but I can see the utility a more compact form has in a more peaceful world like Earth. Certainly, it would be difficult living in the city with a companion that would just knock down infrastructure simply by walking down the road. As I write this script, I am departing from the shores of Rudolph Island, satisfied that I may add one more page to the chapters of my research, going over the individuals of note here on Earth. What I find most striking, though, after everything, occurring theme I found in Lily's story is her insistence that she never wished to be a god. Certainly, she has the potential to play at being one. Her connection to Shylili's spirit far exceeds in power what most here on Earth could withstand, and yet she displays a remarkable restraint, only striking out when absolutely necessary, and usually whenever some new tyrant emerges that needs to be taught a lesson. But perhaps this lesson isn't wholly unique. Should any of you, dear listeners, find yourself being approached and being offered the power to shape the world, use that power responsibly. If you don't, you never know who might be around the corner, ready to teach you that lesson the hard way. This is the Drummer, signing off.